What's up, cookers? Welcome to another edition of Big Ange Cooks, coming to you live from Sydney, Australia, the laughing stock COVID capital of the world. Today, we're gonna do one of everybody's favorites, a smoked beef brisket. If you look on YouTube, there's heaps and heaps of versions of this cook. This is just mine I'm gonna share with you guys. It's nothing really for a competition. It's just for a good hearty meal and the enjoyment of eating a perfectly cooked smoked brisket, fingers crossed. Now, today's brisket is a request from quite a few people, especially Jim from It's All About the Beer, who has sponsored us this week with our butcher paper. So Jim, this one's for you. So without further ado, let's get on to this cook.
To get started for this low and slow cook, we're going to have to prepare our snake. When doing the snake method, I prefer to use a 2 wide, 2 high briquette system, and not forgetting to allow a dozen or so briquettes to put in your chimney to light up so we can start our snake off when we're ready to cook.
The first thing we're going to do is going to make a simple rub. You can buy these from the store, but this is just one I like to make myself as a simple one when I haven't got anything bought. We start with some brown sugar. Brown cooking sugar, which makes the bark nice and caramelized. Plain paprika. Garlic powder. Onion powder. Salt. Black pepper. Plenty of it. Rosemary. Thyme. Bit of cumin. And a bit of chili to give it a bit of spice. Give it a bit of mix around. And then we have what could be enough for maybe 2 briskets. I store it and make more when I need it. Now here we've got our Packers cut brisket. Packers cut just means that it's not the whole brisket. It usually comes out further this way with the flat. This is the point. So a Packers cut just means it's a smaller piece that you can use when you don't want to use the whole thing. They've got a high fat content on the cap, so you really want to just take most of the fat off while still leaving some on there. I think I'm shaking the camera around a bit, but it is what it is. So we'll just take that off, leaving a thin layer over here. Just take this, drier piece off, just like that. Just trim it up a little bit. I like to leave a little bit on there. Our next step is to apply our binder, which I like to use simple yellow mustard. At this point, we liberally add our rub from nice and high up, sprinkle it all around. And we'll let that sit a bit. At this point, we put in an optional injection. I like doing this, not everyone does it. Add some flavor inside. My injection comprises of some Worcestershire sauce, apple cider vinegar, apple juice, a bit of soy sauce, some salt, pepper, garlic and onion powder. You can put whatever you want in it. That's what I choose to put. Just inject various parts of the mussel. There it goes, squirts out the other end. This gets a lot of extra moisture into the meat. You can really feel it pumping up. Gotta get into it, try and get all that brisket moistened up inside. Get it through those muscles. And that's basically going to be the same kind of mixture I make later on for my spritz. So I tend to use the same recipe of my injection as my spritz as well. get a few leakages, it happens, don't worry about it too much. And because we've made it a bit moist, I'll just reapply a little bit of that rub to that wet spot. So we'll make sure we don't miss out on any of that bark that develops. There we go. So as we can see here earlier on, we put our dozen or so ashed over briquettes at the beginning of our snake, and we covered the lid to get the temperature up. At this point, we insert in our water tray, which gives the food some extra moisture. We then add our smoked chunks. I like to use mesquite, that's my favorite for brisket. You might want to use hickory or cherry wood, entirely up to you. Place our grill over the barbie. Place our brisket furthest away from the lit coals, which are sitting there at the beginning of the snake. We keep it away from the fire so it doesn't burn the meat, so it's offset. Later on during the day, as the snake travels around and these coals at the beginning end up extinguished, we'll then transfer the brisket over there to allow the heat to continue on in this unlit area. We've got our probe in. This probe, particularly we're using today, is a Wi-Fi wireless probe. It gives us both the internal temperature of the brisket as well as the ambient of the cooking dome. And I'll show you later on how that works on your phone. It's got an app that comes with it. So we cover this up. We're going to try to achieve an internal temperature of 92 to 95 degrees at the end of the day, whilst cooking at a consistent low and slow of about 130 degrees Celsius. Put the lid on and make sure all our vents are open, both top and bottom, until we reach our desired temperature.
So the probe we used in our cook today was part of this 4 probe meter block, which my beautiful daughter and chief editor of these videos bought me for Father's Day this year. Once the probe's inserted, it gives you an instant internal temperature of the meat as well as the ambient temperature of the grill. Then allows you to set up your cook by selecting your meat. So in this case we chose beef, then we select roast where we find the brisket selection. And there it goes, telling us that we should be right at 93 degrees internal. It then starts estimating a cooking time to give you a guide of how long your food will actually take to be ready. It does fluctuate a little bit during the cook, but towards the end it does get quite accurate.
2 hours later.
So we're at the 2 hours and 15 minute mark. We're about halfway through with this snake. At this point, we'll give it a squirt. It's pretty much the same solution we used for our injection. Just as that bark is starting to develop, hasn't developed fully yet, there's still a few dry spots on it that we're going to moisten up. Getting a bit dark on this side here because it was facing the fire. At this point we might just adjust it a bit. So the snake is burning nicely. We'll cover it up and let it go till it reaches 70 degrees, at which point we will wrap.
Okay, so it's taken us around 4 hours to reach our desired wrap temperature of 70 degrees internal. As we can see, we've maintained a temperature of ambient 128, which is pretty good. The snake's done its job, keeping a constant temperature for a low and slow cook. So we're going to wrap up this brisket in a couple of layers of butcher's paper, keeping it nice and tight, just like a little neat package. Just before we pop our brisket back in the grill, I've noticed that the snake is not long enough to take us to the end of our cook. So I'm going to add more briquettes to the length of this snake before we pop the brisket back on. And as you can see, I've got the probe in the thickest part of the meat, so it can let us know when we've reached our finished temperature of 93 degrees. Here we are at the 6-hour mark exactly, and we've got the call from the meter that we're at the 93 degree mark. So we've just hit our internal temperature of 92 degrees, and we've been cooking for 6 hours. But before we take it off, even though the probe tells us that we've hit our internal temp, we've still got to do the stick probe test for softness. It's got to feel like it's going through butter. It does feel that good to me. So I think it's ready. We'll just put it into our warmer. Nice and snug in there. Well, we'll leave it for a good hour, I reckon. The longer we leave it, the softer it gets. And since we're not going to come back to the pit, we can break the chain. So we can save the coals that aren't lit yet for future usage. Why not, huh? So after about an hour of resting, look inside here, there's our probe. Our hand in there. I can just rip this open, I think. There's a secondary probe that I have left in there. It's going to be messy. A lot of juices here. So these juices in here will be used tomorrow when we make a gravy for our brisket pies. Absolutely amazing, the flavors that come out of this dripping. So we'll cut into our point first. Let's have a look. The juiciness of this. Wow. Do the flex test. Oh, I can't even do that, it's falling apart. Look at that. Look at this. Soft as you like. Absolute perfection. Falling apart. Give it a taste. This is always a hit. It's always perfect. You follow that instructions, follow my tips, do exactly what I did in that video, and you'll get perfect brisket every time. The kids are gonna put it in tacos. I'm gonna make some sort of roll with gravy. You can do whatever you like with it. Tomorrow we're gonna make pies. One of the best smoked meats you can cook. And Fury is waiting to get his share as well. See you next time, Big Ange Cooks.
It's all about the beer.
Almost forgot, this was for Jim Balui from It's All About the Beer, so how can we end without a beer for Jim? Cheers, Balui.